Hey guys, this is John Wood again. I am here at East Rosebud Fly and Tackle in Billings, Montana. I'm going to do another lake fly for you today. This one imitates the giant chironomids that are found in lakes all over the world. This particular fly is called the olive post hackle, and it's an Irish lock fly. I'm going to start with a Daiichi 1130 hook if I can pick it up. There we go. So this is a clink hammer style fly, and what that means is the hackle that we wrap around the post is going to hold the front of the fly up above the water, while the abdomen is going to drop down into the water, and the fish will be able to see the abdomen. So I'm going to start my thread right behind the hook, and I'm going to leave a really long tag about 4 to 5 inches. I'm going to bring the tip of that tag back over and tie it in. Maybe secure it. There we go. And we're later going to use that for our rib. I'm going to put one of these little spring clips in that loop, drop it over the lever on my jaws just to keep it out of the way. So for the post on this fly, I am using CCT fiber. This is a Cascade Crest material, and it comes in a big hank. And I'm just going to cut one of these little bundles off, tie a knot in the end just to kind of keep it under control, and then use the other end, tie in my post there. I'm just going to give it one loop and then pull that up, and then I can move it back and forth and get it locked down exactly where I want. Once I get it in place, I'm going to make a couple wraps in front and then go back over the material and then cut this at an extreme angle. Bind the butt down and then just run the thread right down the hook, way down on the bend. Remember, we're trying to get the butt end of this fly to be under the surface while the hackle holds it up, that end up above the surface. Now the body on this fly is pheasant tail, just your standard pheasant tail. You can get it dyed in other colors if you want to change the color. And I'm going to pull off about 6 to 8 fibers. Make sure the tips are even, and then just tie it in with one really loose wrap. Pull that back till I've got just enough to really secure it in there, and then wrap those tips in by just running back up the hook. And then I'm going to run a nice solid thread base and stop right behind where the butts of the post are, and that's where we're going to take our abdomen to. So I'm going to flip this around upside down because it's easier to get to, and then just wrap those fibers on there, and they kind of lay out in a single layer and make a nice fuzzy appearance. So when I get to where I have my thread hanging, I'm going to bring the fibers right behind the thread and then drop the thread over them. That'll lock those down. And then I'll just bind that position and clip the butts. Be sure and lift your thread out of the way. Now for our tag that I put in a loop, I'm going to spin it a little bit. And I'm not trying to spin it really tight. I just want to spin it enough so that the two thread strands don't separate while I'm counter wrapping them over the body as the rib. This adds a little color and some real definite segmentation as it pushes those barbules down. So there at the end, I'm going to give that 2 wraps. And then I'm going to spin my tying thread and that rib together, and that effectively locks that down where it won't come undone. clip my little tag rib, and then I'm going to flip the vise back up. Now, I'm going to check my position there one more time on the post, and it's good. So I'm going to build a thread dam in front of the post, and that forces it upward. I just bring my thread up, and for wrapping this post, it's a little bit tricky. You want to bring it around and stack your thread wraps one on top of another. Every time you come around, grab your post, put tension on it, and then tension your thread, and then let go of the post so you can bring your bobbin back around behind it and release the pressure as you're coming around. Otherwise, that post is going to just flop over. Now I'm going to run that up, and then I'm going to run it back down to the hook, come around this way, and then I'm going to counter wrap it. So I'm going, if you were looking down, counterclockwise, and I'm doing the same thing, and you can see that post is already pretty stiff. And I'm not putting a ton of pressure on there, but I do have enough pressure that it's pulling the thread off my bobbin. So my post is now good and solid the way I want it. Now I want to position that to where I've got my thread is behind the post. Sorry about that, that way. I want it going over like you normally would wrap your thread behind the post. And that's so I can lock in my hackle feather. Now this is a grizzly dye, olive dyed grizzly hackle, and I've already got it stripped. And as you can see in this, I'm facing what I would be looking at when I'm working with it at you, so you can see the left side has been stripped a little higher than the right. So now I'm going to clip the stem right where those barbs were stripped off, and then I'm going to cut enough barbs off so the length equals from the bottom of the hook up to where I wrapped the post. That's a little bit long, so I'm going to clip that off. Let me give you one more look at what you would be looking at. This side is stripped, that side is not stripped, and then it's clipped right at the bottom. Now that's going to help hold this in when we tie it in position. Now, what would be the top of the hackle after it's wrapped is going to be facing the post. I'm going to bring my thread up here. Let's kill that phone. Sorry about that. Bring my thread, 2 wraps, and then wrap up the post and back down. And that secures that hackle in very tightly. Now we're going to go ahead and wrap the thorax, and I'm going to use 2 strands of peacock herl. Clip the tips so they're even. Put 1 loose wrap over that on my side of the post. Slide that back so there's nothing over the eye of the hook, and then make wraps back to the very top of our abdomen. Now to wrap this on here so that it's not delicate, I'm going to flip my vise and then make 3 or 4 turns with the peacock herl around my tying thread. Then I'm going to use the rotary here on my vise and do 3 wraps of that right behind the post, and then pulling the peacock herl back against the post, make 1.5 in front of it, and I pull that peacock herl up and just work my thread down it without putting a lot of pressure on it, and it'll slide right down the peacock herl. Make a couple wraps, and then wrap back over the peacock herl, and I can clip it, and it's very secure. Now I'm going to go ahead and build my head now somewhat, because I'm not going to be able to once I get that hackle wrapped. Now tying that hackle in the way we did with it facing the post, All I've got to do is kink it right where I had it tied in, and then wrap it. I'm going to do 4 wraps. On the 4th wrap, I'm going to grab my thread, bring it underneath the hackle that's been wrapped, and then over the hackle stem that's in my pliers. Then come back around again. I'm going to go under the end of the hackle that's in my pliers, over, and then under. And that really locks that in place. Now, so I don't lose control of anything, I'm going to go over the eye with the thread, give it 1/2 hitch, just so nothing comes undone on me. Clip this hackle here very carefully. Now, since I've spun my hackle on there counterclockwise, my barbs are pointing in that counterclockwise direction, which allows me to take my whip finisher, get in there, and it's kind of like wrapping a rib on a woolly bugger. Those barbs just get out of the way as you bring your whip finisher around. Now, if I had wrapped that clockwise, the barbs would be pointing at me as I went around, and it would catch them in that whip finish. But that way it makes it much easier doing the counterclockwise wrap. Now, we're trying to imitate a emerging chironomid, so we don't want a really long wing. We want that nice and stubby. And then the very last step, I've got some water-based rod building thread color preserver. I'm going to put a nice hefty drop right in there over those wraps. Now, when that dries, that's going to secure that hackle in there, and that has soaked into all of those thread wraps on the post and the stem of the hackle. And that's a very solid connection, and that fly will catch a lot of fish before it starts to wear. And there you have it, the olive post hackle.